Let's look at the first one. The first one says greatest common factor, so that's when we're taking something out that they have in common. So what number divides nicely into both 2 and 6? 2. Yep. Okay. I'm going to put 1s in here. Remember, if there are no exponents, there's really a 1 hiding there. We talked about when you pull stuff out that you can only pull out the smallest amount. So do you see how this one has 4 A's to give, but this one only has 1? So the most I can take is 1, because I have to take it from both. So I'm going to pull 1 of the A's. This one has 3, but this one only has 1 to give. So again, the most I can take is 1. So this is like the third problem we just did on the warm-up. So now we're going to work backwards. Let's start with the number. 2 times what is 2?
1.
1. And you can write the 1 or not. You don't need to, but you can. We need to get up to a to the 4th. If I only have 1 A, how many more A's do I need? 3. So I'm going to write an A cubed, because if I multiply, that'll add back up to the 4. How many B's do I need to get back to B cubed? 2. And honestly, I think these are the trickiest of the whole group for how to factor, for me at least. Do you see how for this one, your A and B matches? So the only thing I need to worry about is how to get to 6. So 2 times what's going to get me to 6?
5.
I heard 3. 3 I like. 5 would be a bit big. That'd get me up to 10. So if I multiply here, 2 times 3 is 6, and then I have my AB. So we're going to use this to help us solve in a minute. Believe it or not, this is going to be helpful to us. Okay, this one's a difference of squares. This is when you have 2 things and they're both perfect squares. Remember, one gets a plus, one gets a minus. It doesn't matter which is which. You can have the plus and the minus flipped. What is the square root of x squared?
X.
What's the square root of 9? 3. So that's how we deal with this one. We did square roots. So that one, like I said, I think that one's way easier than the first one. Okay. We can do this one. This one gets a special name, but it really isn't anything different than the third one. So I know I need A times A to get back A squared. Everything's positive, so I need some plus signs. And we're going to play the same game we played in the warm-up. What 2 numbers would multiply to give you 36, but would add to 12? 6. Yep, 6 and what else? 6 and 6 again. So 6 times 6 is 36. 6 plus 6 is 12. So this one gets its own special name because the parentheses are the same. You don't need to worry about that. That's never something I'm going to quiz you on. Like, what is the name of this type of factoring? Yeah, just it's interesting that it came out to the same thing twice. All right, this one is similar. 2 sets of parentheses because it's a trinomial. X times x to get back x squared. Now, let's think for a second. What multiplies to 18? Give me my list. 1 times 18, what else? 9 times 2, what else? One more. 3 and good. Okay, so those are our options. Of those pairs, which one could add or subtract to 7?
The 9 and the 2.
The 9 and the 2. Perfect. So we need the 9 and the 2. So remember, sometimes it's helpful to make that list so you can go through and think like which one's going to work. Okay, from here, do you see how we need it to be a negative 7?
Yes.
So I'm going to make this one negative and this one positive. Negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. Negative 9 times 2 is negative 18. All right. So now let's talk about how we can do all this but also solve. So we've got to do this, but then there's a second step. So we need to get all terms to one side. It doesn't matter which side it is. Usually we move everything to the left because then we want everything set equal to 0. So move everything to one side. Which side? Doesn't matter. Whatever your favorite side is. When the directions say to solve by factoring, you must factor the polynomial first. Remember to take out the like terms. So make sure you take out any like terms. Right? Remember for the first one we pulled out a 2ab, so you're pulling out anything that they have in common. And then look for ways that you can factor. And then look for factoring. Like what can you do to factor? So always check to see if you can pull something out first and then factor second. Okay, so this kind of reminds me of like if you go to dance class and they like teach you a little bit of the routine and then they teach you a little bit more and then you put it together. So here's the first lesson is how to factor. Here's the second lesson is how to solve, and then we're going to do both. Do you see how these have already been factored for you? Like somebody came along and factored them for you. That was nice, right? Okay, so you have thing 1, thing 2, and thing 3 being multiplied together and they equal 0. So one of those things must have been 0. What would make x 0 if x was? Not negative, just 0, right? So if x was 0, 0 times this would be 0 times this would be 0, so it would be equal. So if there's an x hanging out by itself, what would make it 0 if it were 0? Okay, go to this one. What value would make this parenthesis 0? What would x need to be?
Negative 3.
Okay, let's think about that. Let's see if we agree. You probably know I agree because I wrote it in pen. Negative 3 plus 3. What is that? 0. So you're trying to decide what would make things 0. How about this parenthesis? What would make this one 0 if x were? 7. So again, we're thinking what would make each 0. Move that over so you can see. Okay, same game. Let's move to the second set of parentheses.
Did you put parentheses when you're writing it?
No.
Okay.
Nope. You can put some commas in between them if you want
Okay.
to show that it's like a list of things, but you don't need to put parentheses. Nope. Okay, what would make this x 0 if it were?
Just 0.
Just 0. Okay, I'm going to skip over this one because it's a little bit trickier.
What?
What would make, we're going to come back to it. I'm not going to like skip it completely. What would make this one,
Yeah.
skip it is hard.
Yeah.
That's unfortunately not how life works. We're going to come back to it though. What would make this one 0? What value of x? If
8.
x were 8, because 8 minus 8, 0.
So do you even write that? Oh.
Do you see this middle one, how it's a little bit trickier?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like when does it equal 0? I don't know. I can't just look at it and see.
Wait, but I wrote. Why'd you write positive though?
What do you mean positive?
Wouldn't it be negative because you got negative 0?
This one?
No, that one. The middle.
This
Yeah,
one?
The 2.
No, we want to, well, it will end up giving me a negative answer. So the question is, when does it equal 0, right? That's what I'm trying to figure
I
out.
don't know if that's.
So you're going to take
Bring
it.
it down to rewrite. Like rewrite it.
Yep, I just rewrote it. I brought this down because I didn't have much space. And I said, hey, when is it going to be 0? So we're going to solve it like we would all the way back in chapter 1. How do you get rid of this plus 1?
You got minus it.
Minus it. So 2x equals negative 1. Then what would you do to finish solving for x?
You divide the two.
Divide the 2. Okay, so we got a fraction, but that's not a bad fraction, right? We know that fraction. So that's one of my solutions. That's one, and that's one. So you can box them in, you can put commas in between them. Again, I know Demise was thinking about like, well, how should I write this? So those are some examples. Okay? So we factored, we solved. Now we're going to do both. Ready? Okay. Here they come. We only have 4 more examples, is the good news. All right, take a look at part C. I don't know where A and B went.
Apparently, I think they were.
Oh, wait, maybe they were the other ones?
Yeah. maybe
Yeah, they were, oh, okay. They were the other ones. I was like, I don't know where A and B are. All right, there they go. We found them. All right, take a look at C. Pretend for a second it just said to factor. What would I do?
Square root.
Yeah, the square root one. So I'm going to do 2 sets of parentheses set equal to 0. What's the square root of x squared?
X.
What's the square root of 64? Ooh, if you don't know, you can plug it in. 8. I agree with 8. Remember, you can always plug it in, though. We always can use our calculators. And what do I put in for signs?
Plus or minus?
Plus and minus. It doesn't matter which is which. Remember, 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 2 is 6. We call that our commutative property. Okay, now we have to do both parts, right? We were talking about putting everything together. So now it's factored. Now we have to think what would make each 0. What would make this one 0 if x were?
Negative 8.
Right? Because take a look. Negative 8 plus 8, is that going to be 0? Yep. Okay. Anybody but Bryson. X minus 8, what would make this one 0? What value would I put in for x? Positive 8, yep. Because 8 minus 8 would be 0. So these are my 2 solutions. And again, sometimes it helps you to kind of box them in and say these are the things.
Please pardon the interruption. Teachers at this time send the 9th and 10th grade students to the PAC for class meetings.
Wait, that's class meeting?
Okay.
You have class meetings today?
Yep.
When are the seniors?
Sometime after
Yep.
freshman and sophomore.
Okay. We gotta keep rolling.
Wait, just real quick though, just real quick. Why didn't you talk about it?
It's a secret.
You talked about it on the announcement.
They just surprised us.
The class meeting.
Oh, you know what they're gonna do? They're
Yeah,
gonna
it's like
can't.
Okay. All right. So, look at part D. Do you see how it's almost like part C? Like it's
Yes.
almost a difference of squares?
Yeah.
But it's not quite. Because you see how it's cubed?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of a problem.
That's a
So,
major problem there.
do you see how both of these, though, I can take an x from both of them?
Yes.
So let's do that first. Let's take out an x from each one. So we're actually going to be able to factor this twice. If I pull out an x, how many more x's do I need?
X times what?
Oh,
Will get
yeah.
you to x to the.
Yeah, we need an x squared. So x to the first times x squared will get me back that x cubed. Here's my minus. I need a minus. Do you see how the x is already a match?
Yes.
What do I need to multiply by x to get to 49x? X times
7.
x times what? You're close. X times what is 49x? I think you're thinking too hard. It's
Probably.
just going to be 49, right? So if you take x and you multiply it by 49, you're going to get 49x. All right, so now I'm going to factor one step more. Do you see how now this one's a difference of perfect squares?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go one more step. I'm going to do 2 sets of parentheses. So this is this thing being factored. What's the square root of x squared? X. What's the square root of 49? throw a plus in one, throw a minus in the other. Again, it doesn't even matter which one. And now we're ready to solve. So now we're ready to do part 2. Okay, start with this one. What would make this 0? If it were
Just 0.
0. What value of x would make this parenthesis 0? -7. What would make this one 0? 7. So those would be my 3 solutions. Do you think if you graphed this on Desmos, you would see an intersect at 0, -7, and +7?
Probably.
Sure would. Okay, we're only going to do one more. We're not going to do part F. But let's go to part E. I do want to do part E. Yeah, we're not going to do F. This one is a trinomial, so this one gets 2 sets of parentheses set equal to 0. I know that I need x times x to get x squared.
Yes.
So I have different numbers that I can multiply to get 15. So I can do 1 times 15. What else?
2 and 5. 2.
Not 2 and 5,
2 and 3. No, 5 and 3.
3 and 5.
It's a Tuesday.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Which of those pairs can also get me to 2 if I add or subtract?
The 3 and
The 3 and the 5. So I need the 5, I need the 3. All right, I want it to be a positive 2x. So I'm going to go positive 5 minus 3. Is 5 minus 3 2?
Yes.
Is 5 times -3 -15?
Yes.
All right, last step. What would make this parenthesis 0 if x were?
-5.
What would make this one 0 if x were?
Positive 3.
Yeah. Am I ask questions or you're okay? You're all right? Okay. So I'm going to give you classwork, and here's what it looks like. It's the same thing we just did. So it's like I'm teaching you a dance routine. The first thing you need to do is factor. So you're just going to factor these. Yes.
Yes, sir.
The second thing you need to do is just solve. And then the third thing that you need to do, oh, this should have an X with it. The third thing that you need to do is factor and solve. So factor, solve, and then put it all together.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. Do you see how I put an X in with number 8? Add an X into number 8. See the 44? The 44